a shortcut to distinction. I think that's why. So it's a small, brief points of the book, I guess. So let's start reading. Page number 128 in the ebook. A Shortcut to Distinction by Lowell Thomas. This biographical information about Dale Carnegie was written as an introduction to the original edition of How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is reprinted in this edition to give the readers additional background on Dale Carnegie. It was a cold January. Yeah, for that. Yeah, it is reprinted. It was a cold January night in 1935, but the weather couldn't keep them away. 2,500 men and women thronged into the grand ballroom of the Hotel Pennsylvania in New York. Every available seat was filled by 7:30. At 8 o'clock, the eager crowd was still pouring in. The spacious the spacious balcony was soon jammed. Presently, even standing space was at premium, and hundreds of people, tired after navigating a day in business, stood up for an hour and a half that night to witness. Yeah. A fashion show, a 6-day bicycle race, or a personal appearance by Clark Gable. No, these people had been lured there by a newspaper ad. 2 evenings previously, they had seen this full page announcement in the New York Sun staring them in the face. Learn to speak effectively, prepare for leadership. Old stuff? Yes, but believe it or not, in the most sophisticated town on earth, during a depression with 20% of the population on relief, 2,500 people had left their homes and hustled to the hotel in response to that ad. The people who responded were of the upper economic strata, executives, employers, and professionals. These men and women had come to hear the opening gun of an ultra modern, ultra practical course in effective speaking and influencing men in business, a course given by Dale Carnegie Institute of Effective Speaking and Human Relations. Why were they were? Those 2,500 businessmen and women? Because of a sudden hunger for more education because of the depression. Apparently not. For this same course had been playing to packed houses in New York City every season for the preceding 24 years. During that time, more than 15,000 business and professional people had been trained by Dale Carnegie. Even large, skeptical, conservative organizations such as the Westinghouse Electric Company, the McGraw Hill Publishing Company, the Brooklyn Union Gas Company, the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, and the New York Telephone Company have had this training conducted in their own offices for the benefit of their members and executives. The fact that these people, 10 or 20 years after leaving grade school, high school, or college, come and take this training is a glaring commentary on the shocking deficiencies of our educational system. What do adults really want to study? It is an important question. In order to answer it, the University of Chicago, the American Association for Adult Education, and the United YMCA schools made a survey over a 2-year period. That survey revealed that the prime interest of adults is health. It also revealed that their second interest is in developing skill in human relationships. They want to learn the technique of getting along with and influencing other people. They don't want to become public speakers and they don't want to listen to a lot of high sounding talk about psychology. They want suggestions they can use immediately in business, in social context, and in the home. So that was what adults wanted to study, was it? All right, said the people making the survey. Fine, if that is what they want, we'll give it to them. Looking around for a textbook, they discovered that no working manual had ever been returned to help solve s- had been written to help people solve their daily problems in human relationships. Here was a fine kettle of fish. For hundreds of years, learned volumes had been written on Greek and Latin and higher mathematics, topics about which the average adult doesn't give two hoots. But on the one subject on which he has a thirst for knowledge, a veritable passion for guidance and help, nothing. This explained the presence of 2,500 eager adults crowding into the grand ballroom of the Hotel Pennsylvania in response to a newspaper advertisement. Here, apparently, at last was the thing for which they had been long seeking. Back in high school and college, they had pored over books, believing that knowledge alone was the open sesame to financial and professional rewards. But a few years in the rough and tumble of business and professional life had brought sharp disillusionment. Disillusionment, they had seen some of the most important business success won by men who possessed, in addition to their knowledge, the ability to talk well, to win people to their way of thinking, and to sell themselves and their ideas. They soon discovered that if one aspired to wear the captain's cap and navigate the ship of business, personality and the ability to talk are more important than a knowledge of Latin verbs or a sheepskin from Harvard. The advertisement in the New York Sun promised that the meeting would be highly entertaining. It was. 18 people who had taken the course were marshaled in front of the loudspeaker, and 15 of them were given precisely 75 seconds each to tell his or her story. Only 75 seconds of talk, then bang went the gravel, and the chairman shouted, "Time, next speaker." The advertisement in the New York promised that the meeting would be highly entertaining. It was. 18 people who had taken the course were marshaled in front of the loudspeaker, and 15 of them were given precisely 75 seconds each to tell his or her story. Only 75 seconds of talk, then bang went the gavel, and the chairman shouted, "Time, next speaker." The affair moved with the speed of a herd of a buffalo thundering across the plains. Spectators stood for an hour and a half to watch the performance. The speakers were a cross section of life, several sales representatives, a chain store executive, a baker, the president of a trade association, two bankers, an insurance agent, an accountant, a dentist, an architect, a druggist who had come from Indianapolis to New York to take the course, a lawyer who had been from Havana in order to prepare himself to give an important 3 minute speech. To give an important 3 minute speech. Okay. The first speaker before the Gaelic named Patrick G. O'Hare, born in Ireland, he attended school for only 4 years, drifted to America, worked as a mechanic, then as a chauffeur. Now, however, he was 40, he had a growing family, and needed more money. So he tried selling trucks, suffering from an inferiority complex that, as he put it, was eating his heart out. He had to walk up and down in front of an office half a dozen times before he could summon up enough courage to open the door. He was so discouraged as a salesman that he was thinking of going back to working with his hands in a machine shop when one day he received a letter inviting him to an organization meeting of the Dale Carnegie course in effective speaking. He didn't want to attend. He feared that he would have to associate with a lot of college graduates, that he would be out of place. His despairing wife insisted that he go, saying, "It may do you some good, Pat. God knows you need it." He went down to the place where the meeting was to be held and stood on the sidewalk for 5 minutes before he could generate enough self confidence to enter the room. The first few times he tried to speak in front of the others, he was dizzy with fear. But as the weeks drifted by, he lost all fear of audiences and soon found that he loved to talk. The bigger the crowd, the better. And he also lost his fear of individuals and of his superiors. He presented his ideas to them, and soon he had been advanced into the sales department. He had become a valued and much liked member of his company. This night in the Hotel Pennsylvania, Patrick O'Hare stood in front of 2,500 people and told a gay, rollicking story of his achievements. Wave after wave of laughter swept over the audience. Few professional speakers could have equaled his performance. The next speaker, Godfrey Mayer, was a gray headed banker, the father of 11 children. The first time he had attempted to speak in class, he was literally struck dumb. His mind refused to function. His story is a vivid illustration of how leadership gravitates to the person who can talk. He worked on Wall Street, and for 25 years he had been living in Clifton, New Jersey. During that time, he had taken no active part in community affairs and knew perhaps 500 people. Shortly after he had enrolled in the Carnegie course, he received his tax bill and was infuriated by what he considered unjust charges. Ordinarily, he would have sat at home and fumed, or he would have taken it out in grousing to his neighbors. But instead, he put on his hat that night, walked into the town meeting, and blew off steam in public. As a result of the talk of indignation, the citizens of Clifton, New Jersey, urged him to run for the town council. So, for weeks, he went from one meeting to another, denouncing waste and municipal extravagance. And municipal extra, where did it go? Yeah, municipal extravagance. There were 96 candidates in the field. When the ballots were counted, lo, Godfrey Mayer's name led all the rest. Almost overnight, he had become a public figure among the 40,000 people in his community. As a result of his talks, he made 80 times more friends in 6 weeks than he had been able to previously in 25 years. And his salary as councilman meant that he got a return of 1,000% a year on his investment in the Carnegie course. The third speaker, the head of a large national association of food manufacturers, told how he had been unable to stand up and express his ideas at meetings of a board of directors. As a result of learning to think on his feet, two astonishing things happened. He was soon made president of his association, and in that capacity, he was obliged he was where did he was obliged to address meetings all over the United States. Experts from his talks were put on the Associated Press flyers and printed in newspapers and trade magazines throughout the country. In 2 years, in 2 years, after learning to speak effectively, he received more free publicity for his company and its products than he had been able to get previously, with $250,000 spent in direct advertising. The speaker admitted that he had formerly hesitated to telephone some of more important business executives in Manhattan and invite them to lunch with him. But as a result of the prestige he had acquired by his talks, these same people telephoned him and invited him to lunch and apologized to him for encroaching on his time. The ability to speak is a shortcut to distinction. It puts a person in the limelight, raises one head and shoulders above the crowd. And the person who can speak acceptably is usually given credit for an ability out of all proportion to what he or she really possesses. A movement for adult education has been sweeping over the nation, and the most spectacular force in that movement was Dale Carnegie, a man who listened to and critiqued more talks by adults than any other man in captivity. According to a cartoon by Believe It or Not Ripley, he had criticized 150,000 speeches. If that grand total doesn't impress you, remember that it meant one talk for almost every day that has passed since Columbus discovered America. Or to put it in other words, if all the people who had spoken before him had used only 3 minutes and had appeared before him in succession, it would have taken 10 months, listening day and night to hear them all. Dale Carnegie's own career, filled with sharp contrasts, was a striking example of what a person can accomplish when obsessed with an original idea and afire with enthusiasm. Born on Missouri farm 10 miles from a railway, he never saw a steel car until he was 12 years old. Yet by the time he was 46, he was familiar with the far-flung corners of the earth, everywhere from Hong Kong to Hammerfest, and at one time he approached closer to the North Pole than Admiral Byrd's headquarters at Little America was to the South Pole. This Missouri lad
who had once picked strawberries and cut cockleburs for 5 cents an hour, became the highly paid trainer of the executives of large corporations in the art of self-expression. This erstwhile cowboy who had once punched castle and branched calves and ridden fences out in western South Dakota later went to London to put on shows under the patronage of the royal family. This chap, who was a total failure the first half dozen times he tried to speak in public, later became my personal manager. Much of my success has been due to training under Dale Carnegie. Young Carnegie had to struggle for an education, for hard luck was always battering away at the old farm in northwest Missouri with a flying tackle and a body slam. Year after year, the 102 river rose and drowned the corn and swept away the hay. Season after season, the fat hogs sickened and died from cholera. The bottom The bottom fell out of the market for cattle and mules, and the bank threatened to foreclose the mortgage. Sick with discouragement, the family sold out and bought another farm near the state teachers' college at Warrensburg, Missouri. Board and room could be had in town for $1 a day, but young Carnegie couldn't afford it. So he stayed on the farm and commuted on horseback 3 miles to college each day. At home, he milked the cows, cut the wood, fed the hogs, and studied his Latin verbs by the light of a coal oil lamp until his eyes blurred and he began to nod. Even when he got to bed at midnight, he set the alarm for 3 o'clock. His father bred pedigreed Duroc Jersey hogs, and there was danger during the bitter cold nights that the young pigs would freeze to death. So they were put in a basket covered with a gunny sack and set behind the kitchen stove. True to their nature, the pigs demanded a hot meal at 3 a.m. So when the alarm went off, Dal Carnegie crawled out of the blankets, took the basket of pigs out of their mother, waited for them to nurse, and then brought them back to the warmth of the kitchen stove. There were 600 students in State Teachers College, and Dale Carnegie was one of the isolated half dozen who couldn't afford to board in town. He was ashamed of the poverty that made it necessary for him to ride back to the farm and milk the cows every night. He was ashamed of his coat, which was too tight, and his trousers, which were too short, rapidly developing an inferiority complex. He looked about for some shortcut to distinction. He soon saw that there were certain groups in college that enjoyed influence and prestige. The football and the baseball players and the chaps who won the debating and public speaking contests. Realizing that he had no flair for athletics, he decided to win one of the speaking contests. He spent months preparing his talks. He practiced as he sat in the saddle galloping to the college and back. He practiced his speeches as he milked the cows, and then he mounted a bale of hay in the barn and with great gusto and gestures harangued the frightened pigeons about the issues of the day. But in spite of all his earnestness and preparation, he met with defeat after defeat. He was 18 at the time, sensitive and proud. He became so discouraged, so depressed that he even thought of suicide. And then suddenly he began to win. Not one contest, but every speaking contest in college. Other students pleaded with him to train them, and they won also. After graduating, after graduating from college, he started selling correspondence courses to the ranchers among the sandhills of western Nebraska and eastern Wyoming. In spite of all his boundless energy and enthusiasm, he couldn't make the grade. He became so discouraged that he went to his hotel room in Alliance, Nebraska in the middle of the day, threw himself across the bed, and wept in despair. He longed to go back to college, he longed to retreat from the harsh battle of life, but he couldn't. So he resolved to go to Omaha and get another job. He didn't have the money for a railroad ticket, so he traveled on a freight train, feeding and watering 2 carloads of wild horses in return for his passage. After landing in South Omaha, he got a job selling bacon and soap and lard for Armour and Company. His territory was up among the Badlands and the cow and the Indian country of West and South Dakota. and stagecoach where to and horseback and slept in pioneer hotels where the only partition between them was a sheet of muslin. He studied books on salesmanship, rode bucking broncos, played poker with the Indians, and learned how to collect money. And when, for example, an Indian storekeeper couldn't pay cash for the bacon and hams he had ordered, Dale Carnegie would take in a dozen pairs of shoes off his shelf, sell the shoes to the railroad men, and forward the receipts to Armour and Company. He would often ride a freight train 100 miles a day. When the trains stopped to unload freight, he would dash uptown, see three or four merchants, get his orders, and when the whistle blew, he would dash down the street again, lickety split, and swing onto the train while it was moving. Within 2 years, he had taken an unproductive territory that had stood in the 25th place and boosted it to first place among all the 29 routes leading out of South Omaha. Armour and Company offered to promote him, saying, "You have achieved what seemed impossible." But he refused the promotion and resigned, went to New York, studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and toured the country playing the role of Dr. Hartley in Polly of the Circus. He would never be a Booth or a Barrymore. He had the good sense to recognize that. So back he went to sales work, selling automobiles and trucks for the Packard Car Company. He knew nothing about machinery and cared nothing about it. Dreadfully unhappy, he had to scourge himself to his task each day. He longed to have time to study, to write the books he had dreamed about writing back in college. So he resigned. He was going to spend his day writing stories and novels and support himself by teaching in a night school. Teaching what? As he looked back and evaluated his college work, he saw that his training in public speaking had done more to give him confidence, courage, poise, and the ability to meet and deal with people in business than had all the rest of his college courses put together. So he urged the YMCA schools in New York to give him a chance to conduct courses in public speaking for people in business. What? Make orators out of business people? Absurd. The YMCA people knew. They had tried such courses and had always failed. When they refused to pay him a salary of $2 a night, he agreed to teach on a commission basis and take a percentage of the net profits, if there were any profits to take. And instead of 3 years, they were paying him $30 a night on that basis instead of two. The course grew. Otherwise heard of it than other cities. Dale Carnegie soon became a glorified circuit rider covering New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and later London and Paris. All the textbooks were too academic and impractical for the business people who flocked to his courses. Because of this, he wrote his own book entitled Public Speaking and Influencing Men in Business. It became the official text of all the YMCAs as well as of the American Bankers Association and the National Credit Men's Association. Dale Carnegie claimed that all people can talk when they get mad. He said that if you hit the most ignorant man in town on the jaw and knock him down, he would get on his feet and talk with an eloquence, heat, and emphasis that would have reviled that world famous orator William Jennings Bryan at the height of his career. He claimed that almost any person can speak acceptably in public if he or she has self confidence and an idea that is boiling and stewing within. The way to develop self confidence, he said, is to do the thing you fear you do and get a record of successful experiences behind you. So he forced each class member to talk at every session of the course. The audience is sympathetic. They're all in the same boat. And by constant practice, they develop a courage, confidence, and enthusiasm that carry over into their private speaking. Dale Carnegie would tell you that he made a living all these years, not by teaching public speaking, that was incidental. His main job was to help people conquer their fears and develop courage. He started out at first to conduct merely a course in public speaking. The students who came over were businessmen and women, and many of them hadn't seen the inside of a classroom in 30 years. Most of them were paying their tuition on the installment plan. They wanted results, they wanted them quick. They wanted them quick results that they could use the next day in business interviews and in speaking before groups. So he was forced to be swift and practical. Consequently, he developed a system of training that is unique, a striking combination of public speaking, salesmanship, human relations, and applied psychology. A slave to no hard and fast rules, he developed a course that is as real as the measles and twice as much fun. When the classes terminated, the graduates formed clubs of their own and continued to meet fortnightly for years afterward. One group of 19 in Philadelphia met twice a month during the winter season for 17 years. Class members frequently travel 50 or 100 miles to attend classes. One student used to commute each week from Chicago to New York. Yeah. Dale, a striking combination of public speaking, salesmanship, human relations, and applied psychology. A slave no hard and fast rules, he developed a course that is as real as the measles and twice as much fun. When the classes terminated, the graduates formed clubs of their own and continued to meet fortnightly for years afterward. One group of 19 in Philadelphia met twice a month during the winter season for 17 years. Class members frequently travel 50 or 100 miles to attend classes. One student used to commute each week from Chicago to New York. Professor William James of Harvard used to say that the average person develops only 20% of his latent mental ability. Dale Carnegie, by helping business men and women to develop their latent possibilities, created one of the most significant movements in adult education. Lowell Thomas, 1936. I think by that we come to the end of the chapter. You can go through Dale Carnegie courses if you're interested in his marketing, management seminar, human relations, and effective speaking. So I think, yeah, we'll be starting a new book from next class. Mostly it will be How about Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Batch. So I think you'll be getting a PDF copy of it. So do you guys have any takeaways or do you want to share anything for today? You got. Hello. Um,
Hello, ma'am. Am I
yes,
audible?
yes, Chandrasekhar. Yeah, you are.
Uh, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. You reading is so good, ma'am. Actually, if I start to read, it takes 2 hours or 1 hour for finishing one chapter. But when you
Oh,
reading, it takes half an hour if you finish 2 chapters. It
okay,
uh,
that's on the machine.
Actually this
Yeah,
one thing to share with, if like we
yeah, sure.
can someone like reading, we also go together, and also we have understood some difficult words. I came to know some difficult words. Face problems by pronunciation, but you reading, I
Mm-hmm.
came to know that words how to pronounce, how sentence by sentence give full stop and how to continue next sentence. I came to know by your reading,
Mm.
ma'am. It's like a nice
That's
reading, ma'am.
really happy to hear. Thank you.
Ma'am.
I'm glad that you were able
Also,
to that it
I
helped. Yeah. Yeah.
we also
Hello.
like uh, we also like to read like you only, ma'am.
You will.
Hello.
You will definitely. Yes. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Am I talking? Hello.
Oh, I'm audible, ma'am.
Yeah, you
Hello.
are. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. In
Yeah, you
takeaway,
are. Mm.
takeaway in this last
Mm.
reading, read starting learn to speak effectively, prepare
Mm.
for leadership.
Mm.
As like
Mhm.
I take away this point from this last point, because you like same as it is you read, no, learn to speak effectively, prepare for leadership. I take out this point, ma'am, to implement my life in further days. This point, learn to speak effectively, prepare for leadership. Hello. Ma'am.
The last chapter of this book is only a summary of the whole book, and it's really truly said that if a person who can effectively uh, share his ideas to you by the way of being an effective communicator, he can steal the show. That is a takeaway from this book as well as the last chapter. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night, Didi. Good night, ma'am.
Good night.
Thank, thank.
Tejashri, I think so, ma'am has left. She had some network issue. Thank you so much, Tejashri ma'am, for reading so well for us.
Thank you, Sandhya ma'am, for giving this opportunity attending every day, night 10 to 11. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity for everyone, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm glad that all of you have attended and learned something. I think we can call it a day.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Good night, ma'am. Ma'am, what happened to your voice? Your voice is too low.
Is it?
Yes, ma'am. Are you feeling well?
No, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then take care, and we can,
Bye, ma'am.
yeah, start off Monday with a new book. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, ma'am. Good night, Bernie.